she's still with us today. She's still with me today. Thank you.
Is Mary Jean Craig here? Judge Craig?
Thank you. My name is Mary Jean Craig, and it's very humbling that you all asked me to say anything. I wanted to say 3 things about Diane. When my mother died, my mother was the mother of 10 children, and the priest who gave the homily said that my mother was a valiant woman, and she was. I think Diane was one of the most valiant women that I ever met. Sometimes the Bible has some really neat old words that you don't think of valiant. It's nice. Because she got up every day, and she did the hard things in life. And she did them sometimes a little bit at a time, and sometimes in big steps. But she did them every day, hard things every day. She was a valiant asker. She asked me to serve on committees that I didn't really want to serve on. She asked me to chair committees that I didn't really want to chair. She even got me to go to Annapolis once, which I really didn't want to do. She was a valiant asker, at least to me. And I did it because she was doing the things that were so much harder than the things that I was doing. So I had to. I was embarrassed not to do the things she asked me to do. Diane was a funny woman. Not funny in the sense that I often hear at cocktail parties, like, did you want to hear this lawyer joke? That kind of funny, which has, it makes people laugh, but to me not in a good way, because it's laughing at someone else and or maybe at their expense. But Diane was a funny person in the sense that sometimes I think we all have to laugh or we're going to cry. And I think that Diane laughed that way every day, and the funniness in Diane came from that place inside her that was genuine and true, and would never laugh at anyone. But she could laugh, she could make me laugh. If I just saw her walking up that aisle with that bag and all that stuff in it, and she carried around, I would laugh like that. So she was funny in the way that I think humor helps everyone get through life that sometimes just seems too hard. And she and I had some of those experiences, and I'm sure you all did too. And the last thing I wanted to say about Diane was a good person. I don't think that Diane ever said anything to me that was anything but good. There was nothing that ever came from her to me that wasn't honest and true. And I've been a lawyer for a long time, and I don't see a lot. People lie to me every day. She never lied to me. If she didn't agree with me, she told me. If she thought I was fat, she told me. She just told me the truth. She was a good person. And I wish that when I had found a way to make a living, I had found a way to make a living that involved more goodness than I did. But here I am. And there was something that I read that really reminded me of Diane, and this is from Shakespeare, so I just wanted to share this with you. It's a quote from The Merchant of Venice, and this reminds me of Diane. That says, "How far that little candle throws its beams, so shines a good deed in a naughty world." To me, Diane was a candle in a difficult world, maybe not a naughty world, but I will always remember all the many little things that she did that to me were valiant and funny and good. Thank you.
use the mic because we are recording.
My name is Bill Houston. I met Diane through some of the people she was working with at the beginning of Hotline. Some of her volunteers came to one of my classes I was teaching at Prince George's Community College. I was teaching sign language, and I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps and was still trying to come to terms with being a Vietnam vet. And these men and women got me to meet Diane 40 years ago. And I got very involved with Hotline. It saved me. Diana and the people I work with, I have deep love and deep respect for because they helped me come to terms with what was and to become aware of what could be. Diane and the people she touched other people, and she was an empowering human being, and I had to come. I came back here in 2002 because I live in Massachusetts. I left here in 1975. Those 4 years, or really 71 through 75, were a very profound time for me in so many ways. I can't begin to express how remarkable that time was, working with my colleagues at the Hotline and with Diane. She got me involved in so many things, and I'm not going to bore you about all of that. I just wanted to say thank her and all the people she contacted who got me involved with all of this. I will never forget it because my life has been blessed and my life has been remarkable. And a lot of that was a transition phase that I was here for those 4 years. And I just needed to say that. And I want to say thanks to Diane, thanks to Dee, and thanks to all the people at Hotline. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Senior Roseberg, and in 1983, when House Bill 150 passed, I had nothing to do with the passage of that bill because I was a freshman member, and I was on the Appropriations Subcommittee on Health and the Environment, and even after that first session had ended, I still didn't know the difference between DDA and MHA, okay? But I learned, and some of the bills that I've worked on that have meant the most to me over the years since have been bills dealing with mental health. And Diane is one of the reasons why. I tell people, whether we're working on a bill, and I'm sure you've heard this, personalize your testimony. Don't make it some abstract proposition that you're testifying for, that you're trying to convince legislators who may be half paying attention or half understanding at best what you're talking about. But personalize your testimony. Well, Diane's life personalize what our obligation is, our commitment should be for people who have mental health issues. Thank you.
With the Maryland Disability Law Center, and the first time that I met Diane, I thought, wow, what a really nice lady. Just like what people have been talking about. She's funny. She has such a good energy. I think I really like her. And then the second time I met her was at a meeting, and I was complaining as usual about some snafu in the mental health system that was really screwing somebody over. And Diane just let loose with this torrent of expletives. I noticed nobody mentioned that before, that she could curse like a sailor when the occasion required it. And I said, okay, I know I like this. And the third time, I don't know if this is true, but another time that shortly after that, there was a bill to have involuntary outpatient commitment in Maryland. And Diane was opposed to this. And I didn't know anything about Diane's family or her background. And she told me about her son. And she said, you know, I'm very much against this bill because of my son Matthew. And she said when he was having a difficult time, I would think that he needed to be hospitalized, and I would do what I thought was necessary to try to make that happen for him. But I would always hire a lawyer for him, because I believed more that he absolutely had the right to refuse and to try not to get that treatment. And that was remarkable to me, that as a family member, that she would take that position, that her son had such value, that he had the right, and she wanted to make sure his rights were protected. And it was then that I said, okay, I love this lady. I absolutely love this lady. And I've enjoyed being with her for all of the reasons that everybody has said, and she was the chair for our PAMI Council, and she was always encouraging us to continue to fight for civil rights for people with disabilities, and she served on MDLC's board in that capacity, and we miss her tremendously. And I just want to say that.
Hi. My speech is unfortunately not going to be like the last two. I'm Scott Lenz, and I guess I'm kind of representing the second generation. Back then, we spent a lot of time at Diane's house at Silver Spring. We spent a lot of time with Jimmy and Patsy and Matthew and Monty and Lady. I can't believe nobody's brought in that. And despite all the crab feasts and crab throwing and spoons games and hearts games and all the other shenanigans that went on, I'm just here to kind of prove in the flesh that we turned out okay, actually. And mainly because I kind of even could figure out back then that even though these people were relatively insane, they were very special. They were special in the sense that they thought outside the box. They thought inside the box, outside the box, all around the box, covered all areas of the box. And so what it did was it helped me to realize going forward that that I could be special too, despite whatever might have been going on. So, life is too short for regrets, but I am bummed out about the fact that after we moved to California, I only saw her a couple times after that. I do have it on DVD though. I'm not going to sell it in the lobby though. But Faulkner said, nevertheless, that the past is never dead. In fact, it's not even past. And I've always taken that quote to heart. And that camaraderie and that specialness really shaped my life in the sense that, most importantly with my own kids, who are 14 and 11 now, that really the most important thing is that they be, mostly happy, relatively safe, okay, and completely loved, like I was when I hung out at Diane's house all those years ago. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Terry Jodry, and I became acquainted with Diane in 1971 when I started working as a volunteer at Hotline. And though I wouldn't disclose this otherwise, since it's come up a couple of times today, I will admit that I was one of the principals in the chicken and pig incident. Now, we've said a lot about Diane's advocacy, but I would just like to talk about, for a minute, about her propensity to force other people to advocate, whether they wish to or not. With a good example being in 1973, when I was a volunteer at Hotline for Youth, and an 11th grader in high school, and there was legislation proposed in Maryland to ban sex education and death education in the public school system. And Diane, making note of this, was incensed and felt that it was very important for young people to like show up at a public hearing to talk about this. And she had a handful in mind. And so she said, how would you like to do this? And we said, no thanks, you know. And she said, no, you know, take a bath, put on some clothes, and here we go. And so we went to this event, and, you know, at the head table of this event was this representative from Prince George, a delegate to the legislature from Prince George's County. I won't tell you his name, but he was such a despicable character. And you know, Diane, whenever you mention this guy's name, you can see him just crazy. I mean, this guy was so far off the right that he would make Michelle Bachmann look like Gene McCarthy. And as each of us would go up and kind of share our experience with the public education, you know, 15-year-old kids here doing this, he would kind of hiss at us. And so we went and sat down, and at the end of it, he came up and started to say something. Now, this guy wore a bowler hat, okay? That tells you right there. But anyway, he had a bowler hat, and there was his bowler hat, and me and my comrades, we saw that, and we had an opportunity. And, you know, we just kind of shimmied over, and we were wearing coats, and kind of got that hat, and Diane, you could see the dotted line from her eyes to us, and she, like, first she kind of looked away, and then eventually she kind of went, yeah. But when we left with the hat, she was tickled. The last thing I would say, you know, back in the day, when she was like forcing us to do more and more and more and more and more, you know, to be of service in this organization, we were of the thought that the recipients of all the benefits of this work and this help were the clients. And I'm sure we helped them some. The absolute beneficiaries of that work was us. And you know, a lot of us were on our way to places that were probably not as good as where we are now. And, you know, and a lot of us were like halfway there. And somehow, you know, I don't use the word miracle much, but like the miraculous power of healing that occurs for the helper is something that I think she mastered as a champion in alternative services. And I will always cherish that for me.
It was in 1982 that the children's mental health movement across the country was gaining steam, and Diane Cabot was in the locomotive. It was about that time that the National Institute for Mental Health had funded a program called CASP, Child and Adolescent Service System Program. This was a humongous, major federal program worth all of $200,000 to each state that applied. Diane was selected as the first and only family member to serve on the advisory board for that esteemed group of people advising to this first children's mental health initiative in the country. Her voice was so important back then when very, very few families had a voice for their very young children, myself included. It was at that point in time that my own daughter, among the hundreds of other children in Maryland, were served out of state because there were no services within the state. I was fortunate enough to meet Diane in the early 80s, and I so remember traveling down to Prince George's County for the Mental Health Association Children's Committee. As many people have said, once you first met Diane, you became immediate and lasting friends with her. Maryland tried many times unsuccessfully to apply for this federal CASP grant, because within that whopping $200,000 for a state, there was an also whopping $20,000 to start a family movement for families who had young children with mental health needs. Maryland was unsuccessful in getting that CASP grant for a number of years, but that wasn't because Diane didn't keep trying. It was not until 1999, and I don't know if Oscar Morgan is here or not, but one more time, Diane went back and asked for funding to start a statewide children's mental health coalition for families. And Diane wrote that grant with several other people, but she was the lead grant writer in successfully garnering that grant that began the Maryland Coalition of Families for Children's Mental Health, which is now a statewide family organization with touching numerous families across the state and even the country. So Diane was honored 2 years ago. Our organization is approaching our 12th year. At our 10th anniversary, Diane came, we had an annual luncheon, and we were so pleased to honor her then as one of our founding members. So, Life on Our Own, like the Stigma Project, we are indebted to Diane for giving us our start as well and leaving us with a long-lasting legacy. I am Jane Walker from the Maryland Coalition of Families for Children's Mental Health, and ever so glad and honored to have been part of Diane's dash.
Hi, my name is Emily Hoffman, and I work at On Our Own of Maryland. And I believe this is my second or third go-around with my people. But I also met him at the chicken dinners over at Diane's house, and I won't forget that. But the first time I met Diane, she transformed my life. And I was in the midst of my master's degree, and I went to a very clinical school because I knew I was going to come out and start saying things that a lot of people were not wanting to hear from a consumer perspective. So I talked to Diane because I was doing an internship in the community. And I happened to see the Mental Health Association advertising, and I went in, talked to Diane, and Herb was there as well. And Diane and I right away just had a connection. And she said, I think we could find something for you to do. So the first thing that she suggested was, there's a lot of hospitals down in the southern part of Maryland, and I would love it if you could call them and find out if they have grievance procedures. So, or, if they do, if we could get copies. Well, I called several, and I called the one she had asked me to call. And you'd be surprised how many did not have grievance procedures and did not know what I was talking about. So I don't know, I guess I was rather surprised by this, and probably because I was, a naive graduate student at the time. But what came from that was she had lit a fire inside and in my soul and in my heart and in my spirit. Because I knew that I was home. I was home with Diane, and I was home with her. I was at home with people who really found that the system needed to change and needed to transform. And my first hospitalization when I was 17, I viewed myself as a transformation agent because I said, this is wrong what's going on and we have to change it. And you can't change it alone. You need a lot of great support. And I saw that Diane was one of those people. And I was, just ever so moved and ever so blessed to be with her during the time that I was. And Diane will be with me forever. And what can I say other than that? And thank her, and I'm blessed being here. So.
Anything else, or should we go on to closing comments?
Well, Linda and I do have some closing comments. I think like Yvonne,
goes. As I tried to think of what to say today, I decided to start with a poem, which I think presents a picture of Diane, and I hope to end with a quote that says it all. The poem was entitled Strong Women by Brenda Hanker. You are one of the strongest women I know. Strong women are those who know the road ahead will be strewn with obstacles, but they still choose to walk it because it's right for them. Strong women are those who make mistakes, who admit them, learn from those failures, and then use that knowledge. Strong women are easily hurt, but they still extend their hearts and their hands, knowing the risk and accepting the pain when it comes. Strong women are sometimes beaten down by life, but they stand back up and step forward again. Strong women are often afraid. They face fear and move ahead to the future as uncertain as it can be. Strong women are not those who always succeed the first time. They're often the ones who fail, but they still keep on trying until they succeed. Strong women face the daily trials of life, sometimes with a tear, but always with their heads held high as the new day dawns. Diane has been my friend, a strong supporter, colleague, mentor, traveling companion, and confidant for over 40 years. I was glad to be there with her at the end. We were there for each other in good times and the not so good times. She was a great traveling companion to Cool Fountain, West Virginia, numerous trips to Aruba, then later to the Outer Banks for a number of vacations, and more recently in Las Vegas, both before she moved there and after she became a resident. We had a wonderful time with Sherry and Norman in Las Vegas in March, and she was a real trooper, doing many activities as well as stopping at numerous casinos to leave a few gifts of our money. She was a great partner for going to the movies as well as the theater. I was really pleased to be able to show her the new arena stage when she was last here, and that we could enjoy seeing a play that we had both, based on both a book and a movie that we had both read and seen, A Time to Kill by Grisham. Diane liked to go out to eat, and her favorite places all had certain menus. In Las Vegas, it usually became breakfast, which became her favorite. Often when she was asked if she wanted to do something, she would say no. She didn't want to do it. She didn't like to do it. However, after we convinced her to do it, she would always remark about what a good time she had. This was more likely to happen once she stopped driving, mostly because she didn't like to have to depend on others for a ride. Her independence was very important to her, and she didn't like losing it. There are some moments in life when one wishes that one could bring someone back down from heaven, spend another day with them just one more time, give them one more hug, hear their voice once more, and say goodbye, and have a chance to say I love them. Unfortunately, we rarely has that opportunity, and it really is important for us to take that in living stage to the fullest. To have been with Diane at the end is a special honor I cherish, no matter how hard it was to let her go. In closing, I would like to share a quote which I found, which I think reflects Diane's contributions and presence, by Jack Taylor. There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they are gone, the light remains. To me, this was Diane. Even after she has left us, she brought many here today for a reunion, many who haven't seen each other in a long time. Godspeed, Diane. Rest in peace, and advocate for us all in heaven, my good friend and advocate of serving.
Our legendary Diane stories, don't we? I've tried to tell some of them in the slideshow. You're going to see in a few minutes. But a few personal favorites that aren't in there. Mike mentioned the plane crashing that we did before the movie made it popular. Thanks. I forgot about Thanksgiving and Diane's somewhat legendary cooking prowess. And I remember one Thanksgiving when I had given her this hot cider recipe, and she called me and she said, something's wrong. We're sneezing and our faces are getting all red. And it smells really bad in the house and people are coming over soon. And I said, well, what did you put in it? And so she got the little spice jars and she said, oh, pepper. I thought they were cloves. That was a classic. Another classic was one day she came into the office and she was just overflowing with this grinning look on her face that probably a lot of people here know. And she says, you're not going to believe what I just did. And I said, tell me. She said, well, Jacob and I, it's her grandson, were walking into the rotunda and I got this idea. And she said, remember when you were in grade school and you went like this with your foot to trip somebody? She said, well, I got this idea to do that, but instead I tripped myself and I fell flat on the floor, ground floor of the rotunda. Jacob, when you watch this, I'm telling this one for you. And when all of the people came running over for this poor old lady who fell on the floor, she said, you're not going to believe what I did, but I looked after them and I said, he did it. She was so proud of herself. Another personal favorite was a plot that she never really operationalized, but this plot was to take her personal remote control fart machine, which she had in her office, and put it under the chair of a certain leader of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee, who had a legendary knack for scaring the pants off nervous people who came to Annapolis to testify. And never happened, but we discussed it a number of times. Mostly, what I want to say about Diane is that she had a heart that was big enough for all of us, and then some. Fiercely devoted to her family and friends, young at heart, mischievous, passionate in her work, she was a force to be reckoned with. And together, over the 20-some years that I knew her, we fought a lot of great advocacy battles together with SpongeBob and our rubber chickens at our sides. But the other thing I've been thinking about a lot these past few weeks is Diane's era. And the era of many people in this room. It was a time of strife in the world, and also a time when so many of us were focused on doing what was right, making the world a better place. Money wasn't at the top of our priority list, and we got more from living our convictions than you can ever get from money. It's hard to be middle-aged and watch our unknown heroes leave us. And know that with them go an era and the spirit of the moment in time when you came of age, a moment that no other generation will relive. I miss Diane. I'm glad I knew her. I'm glad she was my friend. And I thank her from the bottom of my heart for everything she did for me. So let's watch some pictures before I completely lose it. And I want to give a special thanks to Scott and Dick for helping with the tunes that I hope will not make you tear up when you watch. Thank you.